This morning, inflation at the highest rate it has been since 1982. Americans saying they feel it every day.
2021 was a very expensive year for Americans. We started to see some prices cool down last month, but not many. Americans we spoke to say they're trying to live with these higher prices. They're trying to budget, but that sticker shock still stings.
Americans, on average, paying about $250 more for the same things they were buying a year ago. Gas topping the charts, up nearly 50% from a year ago.
We're all dead. Doing away with any subsidies for fossil fuels, number one. Number two, holding them liable for what they have done, particularly in those cases where you're underserved neighborhoods and you know the deal, okay? You know the deal, okay? And by the way, when they don't or when they're deliberate, we'll put them in jail.
Kiddo, I want you to just take a look, okay? You don't have to agree, but I want you to look in my eyes. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel, and I am not going to cooperate with it, okay?
Would there be any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated.
There are 9,000 unused approved drilling permits. So I would suggest you ask the oil companies why they're not using those if there's a desire to drill more.
When one hears about an oil resource, it's very tempting to imagine a fixed reservoir, like a tank, and imagine that as that tank is gradually depleted, you get to some point where it's all gone. That's true for some conventional so-called volumetric oil reservoirs, but hydrocarbons occur in a vast diversity of forms. There are immense reservoirs, for example, of Canadian oil or tar sands that are well-known deposits. It's easy to know precisely where they are, but they're very expensive to extract and turn into oil. There are other deposits like ultra-deep finds recently made off the coast of Brazil, where production is well understood, but finding them is very difficult. When you look across the whole world, there's enormous diversity of different kinds of oil and gas reservoirs, and that diversity means that there's no reason to think about a single fixed supply. There are larger and larger supplies of materials that are harder and harder to get at. This time series that shows the oil price along with the number of working US oil rigs. See how the two move together. They're correlated. Indeed, the technical definition of oil reserves is the amount of oil that can be produced using current technology at the current market price. This means that if oil price suddenly goes up, oil reserves actually go up overnight with no change in technology and no change in the actual oil in the ground. Oil reserves are in this sense partly an economic definition. The McKelvey box provides a good way to think about the role of price, technology, and geology in determining the availability of a resource, like oil and gas. This is a system that's used by economic geologists studying both oil and gas and other resources like, say, minerals. The vertical axis shows the cost of producing the resource with current technology, while the horizontal axis shows the certainty that resource exists, geological certainty. So you can think about existing oil and gas reserves or resources on these two axes. The Canadian oil, or tar sands for example, are geologically certain in that we know precisely where they are. But the cost of accessing them, the cost of extracting that oil from the sands and turning it into marketable product has been very high, although it's gradually declining as the technology improves. This means that when one fuel is scarce, they can shift to another fuel, and this provides a kind of economic interchange between the three fuels. A single disaster, natural disaster or attack on, for example, the major Saudi loading terminal, could drive oil prices enormously high, while a global economic recession could drive them much lower. What these factors do is predict that the long run availability of fossil fuels is large, and that it's unlikely that in the long run, sheer scarcity of fossil fuels will limit our ability to use them, at least not for centuries.